The story begins with a man narrating something about people obtaining too much power, and that it is time for the sphere to be cleansed. The narration ends and we see hands have been writing on a book. The right hand is seen putting the paintbrush as being placed on the side and grabbing a gun. We don't see the person's face, but it seems the person is shooting himself or herself, committing self-deletion. We then see that the book is closed with the title on the cover saying the last story. We're then treated to a lengthy title sequence featuring the credits and title. 2 airplanes are seen flying while we see the date and location, Korea, 1953. Lois Lane is heard speaking on the radio something about a ceasefire which is believed to be the war between the US and Korea being stopped for the time being. The 2 pilots from the planes talk to each other. The other pilot congratulates the other one named Hal for being able to go to space in the coming days. Hal brushes this off and says he's going to be a test pilot until they are attacked by numerous other planes. They are able to fend off the invading planes, but Hal's plane crashes, but he is able to pull the chute and survive. Hal is then attacked by a Korean soldier who is minding his business. Hal is telling the soldier that the war is over, but the Korean soldier isn't listening. The Korean is still attempting to stab Hal until we finally shoot the soldier. As Hal is lying on the ground, he continues to mutter the phrase, "The war is over." Meanwhile, we see the name Gotham plastered on the screen, and it shows some sort of observatory. A dying man is being held by some unknown creature. The dying man asks for forgiveness as his initial goal was just to send a signal to Mars. Instead of sending just the signal, he teleported something to Earth. That something is named John Jones, also known as the Martian Manhunter. The man dies and John takes his identity by changing into the dead man. Superman is then seen flying over an area in Indochina. There are a lot of dead bodies visible as well as those that are being burned in a fiery pit. Superman enters the door to see a group of women celebrating with guns. Wonder Woman is also partying with the women. Diana asks Clark to join in on the fun, but he asks what happened. Diana explains that the people of the village helped the French fend off the rebels. The rebels then retaliated and killed all the men and children. The women were kept alive in cages for the soldiers' amusement. Diana explains that she helped the women get revenge, and that's where the bodies on the outside came. Superman and Wonder Woman have an argument on what Diana did wrong. Diana responds by telling Clark that it was the American way. They continue their argument with Superman leaving and the women continuing to celebrate. Elsewhere, we see the same dead guy from the beginning reading a newspaper and going back up to his apartment room, revealing himself to be the Martian Manhunter. He continues to watch TV, finding out more about what makes people tick. While he's watching, he transforms into different people for reasons unknown. Superman is then seen talking to Lois about the members of the Justice Society. Diana returned to her island, and apparently Batman is a fugitive now. We then see a shot of Las Vegas with Hal and his friend Ace just hanging around and having a good time. Apparently they're waiting for something to happen the next day, and Hal continues to gamble. From a distance, we see Iris West talking to someone for an interview. The interview doesn't go so well, so she calls Barry, the Flash, for some small talk. Suddenly, an explosion happens and Captain Cold enters the scene telling everyone he's there to rob them. Some poor guy runs away only to be frozen, and his body crashes on the floor and bursts into ice crystals. Captain Cold sees Iris on the phone and freezes her hand. This prompts Flash to run to her aid, but after thawing her hand, Cold tells Flash that he planted 6 bombs around the city. Flash should choose to disarm the bombs or let Cold go. Without hesitation, the Flash runs around the city to find just 5 bombs. As Captain Cold is making his escape, Barry attaches the bombs to a hot air balloon. He then runs onto the roof of a building to punch Cold out of his helicopter. They both fall into the water, and Flash tells Cold that there was no 6th bomb, but Cold is seemingly possessed. Cold is speaking in a voice that is different, and after the possession happens, Cold regains consciousness and tries to shoot Barry, but he's able to take out Cold without any problems. Ace and Hal are now seen driving in the desert, seemingly going to an unknown location. They have a heart-to-heart, and Hal tells Ace that he could have done more. They arrive at the location called Ferris, but we then cut back to John, who is still watching TV. John transforms into a detective and meets up with another detective. The other detective asks John what's his secret and how come he's getting this information in such an accurate way. The two of them arrive in a very sketchy location and we hear some grumbling and what seems to be fighting on the inside. Batman is taking out some people that look like they're a part of a cult. There's also a boy tied up and one of the cultists attempts to kill him, claiming that the boy is the sacrifice. The fight continues and John decides to help, but a fire breaks out. John is weak to and afraid of fire and is stunned on the spot, and that one cultist is attempting to kill the boy, but Batman saves him. John's partner arrives at the scene to help him. Meanwhile, the boy is scared of Batman, so the other detective has to tell Batman to back off. John regains his sanity and the cultist on the ground begins to talk in the weird voice. He mentions something about all of them being judged by the center and starts to laugh maniacally. Back to Hal and his space exercises. Colonel Flagg is managing his training. The two don't get along, but Miss Ferris decides to reveal to Hal the secret for all these trainings. Flagg talks to some guy asking about what were Hal's numbers during the training. The guy tells Flagg that Hal's numbers were good, but we're shown that the guy is drawing nonsense. And we cut to Ferris and Hal going to another secret location. Faraday tells Hal that the person we saw in the beginning that died in Martian Manhunter's hands was a scientist who was able to contact Mars. Back in John's apartment, he is still watching TV until Batman appears and talks to him. Batman and John decide to forge an alliance, but right as he is about to leave, Batman threatens John. Back in Flash's home city, Gorilla Grodd is running wild. Flash has to stop him, but it turns out this Grodd is a robot. Flash is then attacked by a government agency when he is able to escape. Martian Manhunter is back at work looking like the detective from earlier. He meets a deranged scientist telling him that the military is planning to go to Mars. John is having doubts until Faraday shows up to pick up the deranged scientist. John maintains his cover and shakes Faraday's hand. What Faraday doesn't know is that John secretly is reading his mind, and he finds out the plan to go to Mars was real. They part ways, and later, John arrives at the Batcave. Batman is investigating more on the center, and John tells him goodbye. Batman tells him to have a safe trip. We then cut to the launch of the spaceship, where Hal and Colonel Flagg are off on a mission to Mars. As the countdown sequence is happening, John plans on hitching a ride on the ship that will take him back to Mars. Faraday sees him and tries to stop John from ruining their plans. They have a mild fight, but John saves Faraday right before the rocket launches and fries both of them to their deaths. In space, Hal states that they have to go back due to technical problems. Flagg isn't having any of this and decides to make the ship stay on course to drag their bombs on Mars. Hal subdues Flagg, but the latter later gets up and fights Hal, forcing him to be almost thrown out in space. Superman shows up to save Hal, but the ship itself is destroyed. We're back to Martian Manhunter, who's being kept in a cell by Faraday. Superman tells Faraday to let the Martian go. He contemplates it, but we see the next scene with Diana training with another Amazon. They both argue about something until something big pops up in the sky. The scene is cut short and we see Hal Jordan sleeping on a ship. Suddenly a green light erupts from the building and Hal's ship is mysteriously transported away. He sees the dying Green Lantern, Abin Sur. Sur tells Hal that he is the protector in the area, but due to his failure, Hal has to step up and be the next Green Lantern. Superman is then seen in the Batcave talking to Batman. Robin is on the side admiring the Man of Steel until a radio report is heard. It's Lois Lane reporting some kind of monster attack which the army is having a hard time with. The monster looks like a giant pterodactyl, but Superman dispatches it easily. We see Wonder Woman riding the invisible jet, but the jet's cockpit is bloodied up. Diana asks Clark for forgiveness, and he takes her to the medical bay. Faraday is playing chess with the Martian, asking him why he doesn't escape. John tells Faraday that he has nowhere to go until a report comes requiring both of their aid. John goes into a costume, and with Faraday, they try to make sense of this center. Out of the middle of nowhere, Lois is seen reporting on the TV about a giant monster attack, while Hal is watching on from a bar. Barry turns off the TV from his apartment and tells Iris that he is the Flash. Iris knows this and tells Barry to help save the world. Barry agrees, and we cut to Hal and Ferris talking things out. Hal has to take this ship and help in any way he can with this looming threat. Back at the military base, several masked heroes are having a standoff with the soldiers. Flash arrives and tells everyone to calm down. The soldiers try to shoot Barry and tensions are high. Superman stops this and gives out a speech where they have to work things out and work together. Superman decides to fly out and do some recon. Unfortunately, he gets entangled with the creature and is seemingly killed in the process. This doesn't stop the survivors as Batman comes into the scene introducing Ray Palmer, also known as the Atom. Their plan is to use Palm's technology to shrink the giant creature. This will in turn make it blow up if they do everything correctly. Flash has to bring the part of the machine to make this happen. We are treated to a very lengthy battle with aliens and creatures invading the military base. Faraday and John are trying to fend them off, but the Martian is being attacked mentally. Faraday saves John, but in turn sacrifices himself to take out one of the aliens. Martian goes into a frenzy and takes out several creatures and aliens along the way. Hal and Ace are continuing their mission, trying to drop bombs inside the creature. They enter a psychedelic state, but they're convinced that it is an illusion. However, the blood clots attacking the ship are not. When all hope is lost, Hal obtains the Green Lantern ring and saves the day. He pulls out his friend Ace, and they escape the inside of the creature. It isn't enough yet, and Hal decides to do more. Using the ring's power and the technology Palmer had Flash deliver, they were able to take out the creature once and for all. After the battle, Aquaman pops up in a submarine to tell everyone that Superman is alive and well. In the end, someone is making a speech, presumably the President of America. We see other characters, heroes and villains. Then, suddenly, the speech ends, along with the movie. The end. Thank you so much for watching. Please check out our other videos and make sure to subscribe and tap that bell icon to be notified about our latest videos. We'll see you next time.